Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the electoral debrief, a dialogue with civil society's community representative on the recent Ethiopian elections. I'm very glad to have you here all with us, and I think it's a very huge opportunity. We are hosting this conference on behalf of the UNPO, a Represented Nations and Peoples Organization. My name is Lucia Parrucci, and I'm the Program Manager for Horn of Africa. We are hosting that jointly with the MEP, member of the European Parliament, Jordi Solé, and the member of the European Parliament, Ignacio Corrao. There are many different communities here talking, actually 9, if you saw the agenda. So I will really immediately stop talking and give the floor for the opening remarks to the hosts and the guest speakers. While we're going to finish with this session, we will be moving forward with the communities, and I will call all of them in alphabetical order. Again, as I was explaining, please mute yourself and do not share your camera unless you are speaking, because to advantage the system. Thank you very much to all of you. Jordi, I believe you would like to do a small introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Good afternoon from Brussels, from the European Parliament, and welcome everyone attending this webinar on the electoral process that took place in Ethiopia on the 21st of June. Let me start by thanking the UNPO for this great initiative aiming to give voice different communities that compose Ethiopia. Today, we will hear from representatives of the communities of Amara, Ejiu, Benicional, Gambela, Ogadeni, Oromo, Kemant, Sidama, and Tigray. And I want to thank all the representatives that will take the floor on behalf of their communities for being with us today. And I also want to thank my fellow MEPs that have also joined this initiative, especially Ignacio Corrao, Fabio Massimo Castaldo, Jean-Christophe Etchen, and I also see here Catherine Langenzipen. Thank you all, and also your offices for your collaboration. As you all know, the elections took place in a context where some parts of the country are witnessing huge violence, human rights violations, attacks to the freedom of the press, and where the political opposition is being persecuted. In 1/5 of the constituencies, elections had to be postponed until September due to insecurity and logistical problems. And as we all know, in the Tigray region, elections could not be held at all due to the ongoing war, in which the rebel fighters are continuing to gain ground after recapturing the capital, Mekele, from government forces, and in which there continue being horrendous acts of violence, like last week's airstrike targeting civilians in a marketplace in a village near Togoga. Unfortunately, we as EU representatives couldn't have first-hand information on the electoral process because the EU electoral observation mission was cancelled due to the impossibility to reach an agreement with the Ethiopian authorities and to grant full security to EU observers. However, today's session is a great opportunity to get this first-hand information that we are lacking, and we will get it from our invited speakers, representatives of peoples and communities that too often are not given the opportunity, the chance to express themselves. Given the socially, economically, politically difficult situation in Ethiopia, I hope that we can have an informative and constructive debate that contributes to a better understanding of the complex situation on the ground, and that could also contribute to a better future for all the communities represented here today, a future in democracy, peace, and equality for all. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for being with us, and I hand over to Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solé. We are very grateful that you gave us this opportunity, along with Mr. MEP Corrao. Ignacio, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Lucia, and thank you to all colleagues and communities who are here with us today. It's great to see many communities, many of you together in this event. We have 9 people, and we have the chance to hear from all of them. Listening and giving them a stage to speak are very important things to understand what is going on. And we will, of course, try to make good use in a practical way. The situation is extremely complex and delicate, but we have to bring people together with dialogue. And it's nice to see that all of you accepted to participate. It's important to understand for us the causes of the problem, and I hope that a series of other events will follow this one. We, of course, with the colleagues, we will try to circulate the report to make sure to amplify your voices to other colleagues, MEPs. And of course, feel free to send us further documentation. And then we hope to bring more people from other parties too, and that this discussion will be taken seriously by other national parliaments. And we hope this report will help Ethiopia to always improve and do any better. So from our side, we know that Ethiopia is a key partner for the European Union in the region. It has taken a leading role in promoting economic integration, peace, and stability in East Africa, whilst implementing an ambitious national reform agenda. The European Union's development cooperation with Ethiopia is one of the largest in Africa and in the world, amounting to 815 million for the period of 2014-2020. Moreover, the country is also one of the major beneficiaries of the EU Emergency Trust Fund for Africa, which I work on in the last term, over 271.5 million for 2015-2019. The ongoing food crisis is worrying, and the famine recalls that one of the 80s. The 90% of Tigray population is at risk affected by this food crisis. The famine is even getting worse if we think the humanitarian workers cannot reach the territory, the so-called blind areas, as soon as we know. And this happens in a country that had been awarded for its hospitality, has welcomed over the years more than 800,000 people who were fleeing from Eritrea after work regime, and a country with a structured reception system. Entire neighborhoods for the reception of refugees were born in Addis Ababa, a light of hope, peace, and stability for the entire area of East Africa. We want to know more from your side and try to understand what can we do to help concretely from the European Parliament side. So we'll be hearing and try to do our best. I give the word back to you, Lucia, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, MEP Corrao. Really, that's very helpful. We have also here with us the Vice President of the European Parliament, MEP Fabio Massimo Castaldo. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you much, Lucia, distinguished guests and speakers, friends. I really would like to thank more the unrepresented nation and people's organization and all my colleagues, and especially MEPs Jordi Solé and Ignacio Corrao, Jordi and Nacho, for organizing this extremely interesting and important exchange, and for inviting me to deliver a few welcoming words. And I also salute the participation of other colleagues that are here with us, and as for example, Jean-Christophe Oetjen that is going to join us, but also Catherine Langensiepen. I'm sorry for my bad pronunciation in German. As a vice president of the European Parliament with the Human Rights and Democracy portfolio, as well as a very active member of Advocacy Committee and rapporteur, standing rapporteur for the Horn of Africa, and also as a member of the Democracy and Election Group of the European Parliament, I firmly believe that is one of my responsibilities to stay together with you today, to listen to and investigate the ideas, the concerns, and the points of view of all the representatives of the civil society in order to truly comprehend the state of a country's democracy, a crucial one as Ethiopia, that Akhtarya was saying before. It's one of the most prominent country in Africa from the demographic point of view, from an economical one, and it's a pillar and should be a pillar of the stability of the continent and of the African Union. It is very positive that the representatives of all the ethnical communities are here today together with us. And I also think that this meeting could represent an extremely important exercise in collaboration and of mutual dialogue. And I thank you all for your participation, because again, when we are speaking about democracy, we should remind that democracy is giving space to the minorities, is giving space to all the voices, and in particular to those fragile part of the societies, and especially the minorities that often are not heard or are not enough heard. As I became aware by on Ethiopian and dialoguing with all the representatives these years, holding an election in the country is an immense task with a multitude of challenges to overcome. Despite all the efforts, however, those elections place in the midst of an extremely serious peace and security challenge, and it proved too difficult to hold election in a number of areas, more than 1/5, owing to logistical and security concerns. Or, as you all know, the EU has unfortunately not been able to deploy an electoral observation mission to Ethiopia. While this is surely disappointing, let me say that the integrity of our missions is a non-negotiable cornerstone of the EU support for democracy. It is therefore even more important to have alternative exchanges with you, with the civil society's representative of the Ethiopian ethnical communities, to discuss best practices, challenges, and all the possible irregularities and violences that you can have eventually witnessed before, during, and after this electoral process. In plural societies like Ethiopia that seeks to manage ethnic diversity, equitable representation of all the communities is very crucial. If critical participants are excluded from the process, the credibility and legitimacy of the voters will inevitably be reduced or put in question. I strongly hope that this election, regardless of the outcome, will result in a force of convening an inclusive national dialogue to rebuild a shared consensus on the future of the country. Ensure inclusion and representation of all the groups is fundamental, and it requires broad-based consultation if people are to feel they are represented in both the process and the outcomes of the dialogue too. However, this process must account for realities on the ground. Let's not be naive, in particular, the violent conflict situation in the Tigray region and the other interethnic conflicts elsewhere in Ethiopia that eventually are less visible. The detention and the stifling of critical voices in the political political opposition, the political prisoners, and the recent violence, assassination, and displacement. I have hope that this is a good place from which a real dialogue can start. That's why I'm eager to listen to your testimonies and reflections today. And I understand also that what the EU and the EP in particular can do to help your voice being amplified, to help you to raise issues and the attention on the situation that you are living every day. I would also be happy to keep a dialogue within this platform and to arrange a further an update meeting, or let's say a follow-up meeting with the UNPO to understand the outcome and the impact of the report that it will be produced after today's meeting. And I'm sure that Mr. Love Bunch, the Secretary General, my dear friend Lucia Parrucci, will do as usual an excellent job. It is sincere belief that the EU must play a constructive and diplomatic role in putting pressure and in supporting the new government in such a process of national dialogue that may have the potential to decrease the polarization and to sustain the important reforms to strengthen democracy and human rights in the country that we all are hoping to see very soon. I thank you very much, and I will be really glad to continue to listen to you and to all the debate, the remarks, the concerns, and everything you would like to share together with us. Don't forget that the European Parliament, it is and it will always be also your house. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Castaldo. I think this is very, very important. And indeed, the video of this conference will be posted on the UNPO website along with the report that we will be circulating along also the European Parliament. I see today with us MEP Langenzipen. I don't know if she wants to join the floor as well. She's always more than welcome. And in the meantime, we actually have a video from the member of the European Parliament, Ojten, that couldn't come with us today, but he really wanted to bring his testimonies, and so I will share the video immediately with you. We are very thankful to MEP Ojten for his remarks, and he already expressed the willing to host the next conference in September, as MEP Castaldo was already mentioned. Since I'm not hearing from MEP Langenzipen, and we have a long list of speakers, I would like to remind the people that are not speaking to close their cameras, and I would like to go in alphabetical order in calling the people that will speak from the different communities. I know that the first person will be Ambassador Sageye, the leader of the AGU Human Rights Advocacy Group, but I know that he's having some problems with his connection. Ambassador, can you?
You are muted, Lucia.
Can you hear us? Can you all hear me now? Ambassador, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lucia.
No, I'm asking Ambassador if he can hear me because he's struggling with the connection, and we would like to have him as first speaker because we're going to in alphabetical order. But apparently he's having problems, and I see that you're talking to him on the public chat. So, Merce, if you don't mind, would be great to sort out the problem with him, and in this way, we can move and we can switch maybe to the second speaker. In the meantime, you can sort out the problem, okay? I think we can go on. And the second speaker is Ted Tirfe, Director of the Amara Association of America. Ted, do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Lucy, I can hear you. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you fine. We are going to give you the floor.
Okay.
Just give me a second. And Ambassador, I believe you cannot hear me, right? Okay, we're going to write in the public chat. Thank you very much, Ted. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucia. Mr. Sole, Mr. Corral, UNPO officials, and distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to represent the Amara ethnic community at this timely and important event. My name is Teodros Terfe, and I am the chairman of the Amara Association of America, or AAA for short. Established in 2016, AAA is a nonprofit civic organization that represents the Amara diaspora in the United States. Our work includes investigating and documenting human rights abuses against Amaras and other ethnic communities in Ethiopia, coordinating humanitarian relief to Amaras in need, and serving as a voice for the Amara people in media outlets, think tanks, and human rights organizations. We also educate American federal policymakers on issues affecting Amaras and Ethiopia and advocate for ways the United States can help advance Ethiopia's democratic transition. Ethiopia's 2021 national elections have come at a time of war, ethnic violence, and political repression across the country. Most, if not all, of my fellow Ethiopian speakers today will likely touch upon how these issues have plagued their communities, and the Amaras are no exception. These issues preceded election day, but continue today with increased intensity, presenting an existential threat to Ethiopia itself. First, I would like to give some background information on the Amara people. Recent partial estimates from outside sources suggest that more than 30 million Amaras live across Ethiopia. That would make the Amaras at least the second largest ethnic group in Ethiopia alongside the Oromo. The last Ethiopian census taken in 2007 recorded Amaras as approximately 27% of the population. However, significant controversies arose with the census that suggests Amaras were systematically undercounted across the country. The lack of a new comprehensive census, since then, a census that would allow all Ethiopians to freely identify with one, multiple, or zero ethnic groups makes the Amara percentage figures a difficult and sensitive topic. However, for clarity's sake, I will use the 2007 data as a reference point. I hope you all can see the map that Lucia would be is sharing. This map shows all of Ethiopia's zones, our second level administrative units, color-coded by their ethnic-based region per the constitution. All the yellow zones are part of the so-called Amhara region. This is part of Ethiopia where Amaras are constitutionally recognized as a native or indigenous people. In most of those zones, Amaras make up more than 90% of the population. The exceptions are Agaw Awi and Oromia special zones, where there are sizable Amara minorities, but the zones are carved out for the Agaw and Oromo peoples, respectively. No region in Ethiopia is ethnically homogeneous. Outside the Amara region, all the circle zones on the map are where Amaras make up more than 10% of the population. The red underlined names are for the chartered cities of Addis Ababa and Dire and the Harare region. Amaras make up sizable minorities in each and are a plurality in Addis. The two zones in Tigray, with red asterisks, recorded Amara populations of only a few percentage points in the last census. However, these areas used to be part of the non-ethnic based Gondar and Wollo province prior to the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, forcefully taking them over in the late 1980s. When the TPLF invaded these areas during the Civil War, many Amaras were forcibly expelled or pressured into fleeing into Sudan and what is now the Amara region or other parts of Ethiopia. An attempt to ethnically cleanse the east areas of Amaras. Those Amaras that remained were subject to persecution and repression by the TPLF government for 3 decades, leading many to identify as Tigrayan or another ethnicity. AAA and the community at large feel that because of this, the 2007 census numbers for both those undercount the Amara population as part of the former government's attempt to justify their inclusion in the Tigray region. Like any ethnic group, the Amaras are not a monolithic entity. When it comes to religion, a majority of Amaras are adherents of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. However, a sizable minority, perhaps 20% of Amaras, are Sunni Muslims, while smaller groups have converted to Protestant Christianity in recent years. While nearly all of us speak the Semitic Amharic language, regional variations and influences from other peoples are substantive. But in general, Amaras are united by their belief in the Ethiopian state and their support of all of its diverse peoples. Many Ethiopians initially welcomed the appointment of Abiy Ahmed as Ethiopia's prime minister in April 2018. His government announced an agenda to try furthering Ethiopia's democratic transition after 27 years of authoritarian rule. This included a commitment to facilitate the country's first free and fair elections, which were initially scheduled for August 2020. But in March of last year, Ethiopia's parliament postponed election day because of the COVID-19 pandemic, while the elections were eventually rescheduled for June 2021. Developments occurred that led many Amaras, including us at AAA, to conclude that the elections would neither be fully free nor fair. As Ethiopians waited for a new election day to be scheduled, the country was hit with a series of violent crises. This, of course, includes the war in Ethiopia's Tigray region, where the resulting humanitarian atrocities against the Tigrayan people have garnered significant international concern. For my community, the biggest crisis has been a series of massacres that began in 2018 against Amaras, mainly living outside the so-called Amhara region. The perpetrators of these attacks have mainly been armed non-state actors in Oromia by the Oromo Liberation Army and Benishangul Gumuz regions by Gumuz militants. But massacres have also taken place in other parts of the country, including within the Amara region and as part of the war in Tigray, notably the massacre of over 700 Amaras in Maikadra by the TPLF and its associated militias. In some cases, complicity by local officials in the massacre of Amaras has either been alleged or acknowledged by the government itself. A combination of reporting from human rights groups such as Amnesty International, Western and Ethiopian media outlets, and AAA's own field investigations show that more than 2,000 Amaras have been killed in targeted attacks over the past year. We believe a full independent investigation will reveal a much larger number. Close to 800,000 Amaras have been internally displaced due to these massacres, and the fear of further attacks are on the minds of Amaras today. The Ethiopian federal government has yet to properly acknowledge or respond to these massacres with a comprehensive political and security strategy. Amid this chaos, elections have been a much lower priority for the Amara community. At the same time, Amaras who tries to organize politically outside of the ruling Prosperity Party system were treated as criminals by the government. The opposition National Movement of Amara, or NAMA for short, was formed in 2018 to represent the Amara people both within and beyond the Amara region. NAMA strongly opposes Ethiopia's ethnic federal system, as does AAA, but the party felt that the only way to have a voice in the country's political future was to organize Amaras nationwide. NAMA's growing popularity among Amaras clearly posed a threat to the Prosperity Party, and the government took numerous illegal steps to try weakening its electoral prospects. For example, in October 2020, the governments of the Amara region and Addis Ababa banned NAMA from holding peaceful protests against the massacres of Amaras across Ethiopia. Attempts for NAMA to hold election rallies during the campaign season were restricted multiple times by local governments, all of which are controlled by the Prosperity Party. In February 2021, an electoral rally by the Oromia Region Prosperity Party branded NAMA as enemy of the state alongside other opposition movements, clearly to intimidate Amara residents in Oromia. Though NAMA has significant support in the Oromo region, Nama was not allowed to open offices or campaign due to violence or threat of violence against Nama and Amaras, leaving millions of Amaras disenfranchised. In the Benishangul Gumuz region, the ongoing violence against Amaras and other non-native ethnic groups that they are led to the murder of at least one Nama candidate in April and the suspension of his campaign activities there. In the Amara region, multiple university students were killed in May after refusing to participate in a rally for the local prosperity branch. This political oppression was not only felt on the campaign trail in the run-up to the rescheduled elections. Amaras who were suspected of supporting Nama faced significant difficulties in registering to vote. This does not even include the hundreds of thousands of internally displaced Amaras, whom the National Election Board of Ethiopia lacked the capability to even try registering. And due to the government's inability to resolve conflicts across Ethiopia, numerous constituencies, many of which have large Amara populations, are not scheduled to vote until September. All these issues culminated in an election with lower than expected voter registration and turnout. Unfortunately, the worst of the Prosperity Party's repression tactics against Nama were saved for the election itself. Evidence continues to be collected, but Nama has publicized accounts of the Prosperity Party threatening their election observers, confiscating voter registration cards, and casting ballots on their behalf, and stopping the vote count at some polling locations when it was clear that Nama candidate was leading. I would be remiss to mention that while it did not organize along ethnic lines, the Balderas for Genuine Democracy Party is supported by many Addis Abeba's Amara residents who want a city not dominated by a single ethnic group. The party's founder and leader, Iskandar Naga, is a prominent freedom of speech activist and former journalist who faced many years in prison on politically motivated charges by the former ruling government. Sadly, because Baldera's popularity in Addis posed a threat to the ruling Prosperity Party, the government took steps to neutralize Iskandar and Balderas. In July 2020, during the protests and deadly violence stemming from the murder of singer Hachalu Hundessa, federal police arrested Iskandar yet again. Once again, Iskandar was accused of a ludicrous terrorist plot by the government, and his detention and trial have been marred by numerous due process violations. Despite these incredible obstacles and challenges for the Amara community, there are signs that the elections will yield some progress. As of today, Nama appears to have won at least 6 parliamentary seats and 11 regional assembly seats in the Amara region, and more could come in the following weeks. While the Prosperity Party will likely win a large majority of elections nationwide, these small steps toward multi-party democracy cannot be ignored. I want to close by saying that there are many misperceptions about the Amara people that have been shaped by other Ethiopians and outside scholars and journalists. One of the main accusations is that Amaras collectively support Prime Minister Abiy and are the only ethnic group that feels the current government represents their interests. On behalf of AAA and millions of Amaras in Ethiopia and in the diaspora, I want to ensure that everyone here knows this is false. I am sure that all other speakers here can discuss political repression and a sense of estrangement from the Prosperity Party, and Amaras are no exception to that. It is my hope that once we get past the false narratives and the demonization and scapegoating of entire ethnic groups, we can start to focus on real solutions for ensuring equal rights and justice for all Ethiopians. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions you have for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. We have now the possibility to have the representative of the leader, actually, of the AGU Human Rights Advocacy Group, Admasu Tsageye. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. The floor is all yours. And prior to start, please make sure that the people that are not speaking are closing their cameras. Thank you very much, Ted. Admasu, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. The Ethiopian election 2021 was not fair, free, and democratic in Amhara region areas. Ms. Lucia Parusi, Project Manager, Horn of Africa of the UNPO, Honorable Jordi Sol, Member of European Parliament, Ignazio Karoy, member of European Parliament, Honorable Fabio Massimo, Vice President of the European Parliament, Honorable Jean Christophe, member of the European Parliament, and other guests. Thank you for giving the opportunity to speak on behalf of Agao Human Rights Advocacy Group. Population of Agao people. For your information, the Agaos are indigenous people who contributed considerable civilizations for mankind in animal domestication, plant discovery, and architecture. It is also spelled in Amharic Agao instead of Agao. The Agaos ruled Ethiopia peacefully under Zagwe dynasty from the 10th century to 13th century until their empire was overthrown in 1270 AD. Official statistics about the Agao population is sadly distorted and puts about 3% of population of Amara state. This percentage represents only Agao language speakers. In reality, including Amharic-speaking Agaos, today there are about 10 million people who identify themselves Agao in Ethiopia, which is 33.3% of the population of the Amhara state. Most of Agaos are Christians. A majority of them live in Amhara region, but most of them have been repressed not to disclose their identity publicly due to coercive acts of the Amhara regional government and its supporters, including assassination, displacement from their land, imprisonments, and dismissal from their jobs. I have listed the link below for more information about the Agao and Command people. Election 2021 in Agao area. In Amhara region, there are 3 Agao administrative areas or provinces called Waghamra, Kamant Gondar, and Awi. In these areas, 4 political parties participated in the election. Among them was Agao National Congress, known as Shango, which aspired to create autonomous state for the Agao people within Ethiopia. For Agao people, the election 2021 was meaningless, wastage, and injustice. I mean, it was not fair, free, and democratic in Amhara region, particularly in Agao areas. My conclusion is based on the facts on the ground. I mean, process, pre-election, restrictions, persecutions, and bans conducted against the party on the election day. Let me brief you on these bans and persecutions carried out before and during the election. 1. Pre-election restrictions on the party. The pre-election restrictions include unfavorable situations for town hall meeting, making a public meeting hall inaccessible for the party, either by overpricing the service fee or by making fake schedules. Because of these obstacles from the ruling party, plus resource constraints, the party was unable to conduct even a single town hall meeting with the public. The party was banned from using the campaign time allocated to Amara regional media. Despite the campaign being funded by the Ethiopian Election Board, the Amara media refused to broadcast the party's campaign message as per its agreement with the board. The media told it didn't like the party's campaign message. The election board failed to rearrange an alternative media for the party. 2. Mandate on farmers, civil servants, and their families. The farmers were strictly told to elect only Lamb, the ruling party's election sign. The farmers were also told they would not get fertilizer if they would elect Shango and be peeped with a camera for execution. Civil servants and their families were imposed a mandate to elect the ruling party called Prosperity Party. Business community members were warned over taxation if they would elect the Agao party, Shango. 3. Pre-election persecutions on the party leaders and activists. There were persistent persecutions against the party, namely Shango, including keeping in detention without due process party leaders and storming the party's office. The violence was carried out by the government armed gangs, militia, members and by armed groups called FANO, sponsored by National Movement of Amara, the right-wing extremists. On May 15, the party's office located in Jawi district, Awizon, in the town of Fandika, was stormed with an M14 automatic gun. The office was hit with 15 bullets in the midnight and partially destroyed the facility and miscellaneous documents and supplies. Mr. Alamara Wirdau, the party's chairman, escaped 2 assassination attempts. The latest attempt was carried out on May 28 in Bahardar while he was on court premise. On June, Mr. Fakadu Masfan, candidate and executive member, Mr. Shmalis Agdao, the Awizon party's officer, and 2 local party activities were detained for a brief period in Jawi. In the first week of June, because of continuous persecution, the party's executive members and the election candidates, Mr. Fatallo Abaina and Mr. Gabrahiot Mulau, sought asylum in Sudan. Similarly, in the same week, the party's Wag Humra leader, Mr. Walter Mikhail, he is a blind man, zonal public relations and candidate, and 2 other candidates disappeared. Their whereabouts are not known. They were also detained in November 2020. 9 out of 15 the party's executive members were in detention for 6 months without due justice after they tried to have meeting with the public at the town of Njabara, Awizon, on March 15, 2020. On the election day, June 21, party observers were restricted to visit any of the polling stations. 4. Intentions of persecutions. The regional government's persecution against AGO political party and its supporters are not just intended for the political control. Rather, it is a part of a strategic plan to undermine the existence of AGO and command people in the area to take over their rich heritage and land. For example, the government has engaged in intensive settlement in the Awi areas. So far, it has settled more than 60,000 people in Jawi district, about 10,000 people in Zigam district, and more than 6,000 people in Ayo district. All these settlements are done in the pretext of investment by displacing the indigenous Ago people from their land. The displaced Agos are currently homeless and jobless. Some of the victims' whereabouts are not known. Positive part of the election. I believe a positive part of the current election is good intention from the Ethiopian election board to hold relatively fair election. For instance, the board acknowledged the existence of irregularities in the process. Ms. Bertukan Mideksa, the head of board, in her press conference on June 21, acknowledged travel restrictions on the opposition parties on the election day in Amara region and southern region, but it was too late. Post-election views. The party Ago National Congress, Shango, is committed to peaceful resistance. As a result, its leaders issued a statement to the media last week. Party members and supporters not to involve themselves in any post-election violence. We do not expect any non-peaceful dispute in relation to the election. However, we as the Ago community felt dismay in both process and outcomes. We lost trust in an Ethiopian political system, and we felt excluded, marginalized, and felt a gloomy future for our continuity as the people. As mentioned above, unless the international community pays attention to our case. Thank you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much for sharing your testimonies. The next speaker in the agenda with us is Ibrahim Akhtarya, chairman of the Benicional Human Rights Foundation. Can you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Fantastic. You can turn on your camera and the floor is yours.
You guys are seeing me?
We cannot
Not
see
yet.
you.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Can you see me now?
We see. Oh, yes, fantastic. Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Thank you to you, Lucia, and thank you to the members of European Parliament. It is really an honor to be in this stage with the Vice President of the Parliament and the members and my fellow speakers. Thank you for this internationally desk. We never reached it before. It is maybe the first time we are talking to the world, because we have been buried for long. Benicional state, located western part of Ethiopia, eastern part for sure for Sudan, along the border between Sudan and Ethiopia, with the landscape of 400,000 kilometers square. Very, very rich with the natural resource, water resource, farming land, mineral resources of million tons of gold, and with a population of 6 million people live along the border of the two countries, consist of four main major indigenous tribes of Barta, Gumuz, Komo, and Mau. The state has 3 zones: Asosa zone has 8 districts, Wataka zone 7 districts, and Kamashi zone has 5 districts, and especially district of Tango. Since the British handed out our land to the Abyssinians upon the occupation of Sudan, we became under the ugliest occupation any human race experienced on earth up to now. It started with slavery, then ethnic cleansing, and repetitive genocide and forced migration to replace us with the others from the highlanders and kicking us out from our homeland. It is continuing systematic atrocity on us up to date, within and through the last 120 years, where all the past regimes from 1898 who rules Ethiopia, they never treated us as human, but subhumans, third degraded class. We call several names. Is not the place to say it today. Prime Minister Abiy regime is not an exception, but the worst, where all the above mentioned became the norm. We became under the siege where we and our people favored to die than to live under the vicious, savage torture, where the entire state under the military command post every square meter. Therefore, talking about free and fair election, it is that nice dream we never have in the past, never be now under this Abiy regime, where all our parties, politicians, community leaders, either buried in the mass graves as usual, or detained, or the luckiest escape to exile, who fulfill the regime aim to empty the land, our land, to be without a citizen, because what they want is our land empty from the indigenous people and from the citizen. What they want is our wealthy national resource of ours. What happened in June 26 in Benicional state election was a joke. Wasn't serious election. It started prior to that with the detaining all electoral participants and the observers. They released them after PP, that is Prosperity Party cadres, fill out the voting boxes for themselves before the vote started even. This is happening in Kurmuk district, Surkole, Manje, and Undulu district. Other district, no election took place due to the Abiy army busy killing our people. The same for the entire Kamashi zone and Matakal zone. No election took place because all the participants are in jail, including even Prosperity Party members from our indigenous people, which is funny. They are from indigenous because they don't trust us and we don't trustworthy to them. In Asosa Zone District, they declare that the running out of voting papers when they discover that the people are voting for BP opponents. Then they decided to declare orally that Asosa Zone election was an invalid election, even though the commissioner, the election commissioner, refused to give a written statement to the opponent participant. I will thank again for giving us this opportunity. We have a lot to say, but this is not a desk. What is going in Ethiopia is a government #1 killer for his own mass. And in our land, because there is no cameras there is no CNN, there is no Sky News, there is no N Media, they deliberately killing us. Thank you very much. Free Benicional.
Thank you very much for your speech, Chairman of the Benicional Human Rights Foundation. The next speaker is Mr. Okok Okok, representative of the Southwest Indigenous People Humanitarian Organization. Are you here with us? Can you hear us? Mr. Okok, can you hear us? Merce, if you can see the link of a person in the chat, can you inform me? In the meantime, since we have so many speakers, while waiting for Mr. Okok, I would say that we can move forward with the presentation and the testimonies from Zakari Abdullahi Hassan, activist and journalist from the Ogaden people. Are you here with us, Mr. Hassan?
Of course, I can hear you.
Fantastic. So you can enable your camera and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Lucia. My name is Zakari Abdullahi Hassan, known as Faisal Shabo. I am journalist, activist, and human rights advocate from Ogden, East Ethiopia. Starting off, I would like to thank the members from the different organizations and the EU Parliament that are taking part in this conference. The Ogden region is located in the eastern Ethiopia and adjacent to Somalia, and is 450,000 kilometers square. The people that live in that region are exclusively Somali, who are 100% Muslim. The population of the Ogden is estimated to be about 8 million, while only 5 million are necessary. The region consists of 11 provinces and 94 districts. It's the second largest region in Ethiopia and the most resource-rich in Ethiopia, with oil, gas, and petroleum, and also fertile land. For the Somalis in the Ogaden, the recent changes in Ethiopia over the past couple years is viewed by many as a lost opportunity. Sure, they have a peace today, but many are certain on what the future holds. The Ogaden is a region that has been marred by devastating conflict for the past several decades. However, the past 3 years have, with peace coming to fruition, following the peace deal between the ONLF and the Ethiopian government. Despite all of the peace, most Somalis feel left out the picture and remain voiceless and politically marginalized on their own soil. With the postponement of the election in the Ogaden being case in a point. When the Ethiopian current ruling government took the power in 2018, many Somalis viewed it's a chance where they could finally be allowed to decide their fate and future, both politically and community-based wise, where leaders elected by ordinary Somalis could be given an opportunity to govern and serve the needs of their community. However, this hope seems to have become futile and ill-explained. The NEP NABE, which oversees election on behalf of the Ethiopian federal government, stated that the election would be postponed in the Ogaden due to the voting irregularities with distribution of the voting cards in the region. However, this was a manufactured issue concocted by the Ethiopian ruling party known as EPP. In the year or so running up to the election, the Somali region branch of EPP, which is currently governing body in the Ogaden region, they began initiating rock tactics and using methods akin to the voter separation, which were prevalent as of the recent just period to never announcing postponement of the election in the Ogaden Somali region. The ruling party in the Ogaden would seize and confiscate voting cards to prevent the public from accessing them in large numbers in various towns and districts. With the aim of controlling the voting process, they have also forged many voter registration cards by filling them out with many non-existent names as witnessed in different parts of the region. On the top of that, countless individuals from the different political parties have been arrested in various areas in the Ogaden and held under the arbitrary detention for a long period of time. As a result of this, all the rival political parties in the Ogaden Somali region voiced the concern of this by reaching out of NEBE and issuing multiple joint statements. As a result, this led to all the opposition parties in the region that they would not take part in the election until these irregularities and issues are addressed and under, in order for free and fair election to take place in the region. The NABE responded completely, postponing the election in the Ogaden Somali region until September, while not being through the transparent and holding Ethiopian ruling party EPP Somali region branch accountable for their role in creating this manufactured election mayhem in the Ogaden Somali region. A score of candidates and political parties in the Ogaden have been barred from registering in order to take part in election, which can be attributed to how the ruling party EPP is adamant on the controlling the outcome of the election in the Ogaden. To make matter worse, the people of the Ogaden are not allowed to vote freely in different parts of the region. For example, those born in the Western Ogaden cannot vote Eastern, Northern, or Southern Ogaden, knowing everyone is only allowed to vote in their place of birth, and knowing most of the inhabitants in the Ogaden are nomadics, pastoralists. It makes it even worse. It makes it even harder for the vast majority of the population to exercise their democratic right to vote. As a result, many people were dismayed and even demoralized. The people of the Ogaden have witnessed their livelihood and the future thrown peril by a consecutive government in Ethiopia, and the fears are growing that the current ruling government may follow in the footsteps of its predecessor in regarding postponing of this election. The media landscape in the Ogaden is not how it used to be. Prior to 2018, when the region was embroiled in conflict, journalists were banned from entering the region due to the fact that the Ogaden was under the complete military blockade and turned into the open-air prison that was cut off from the outside of the war. Following 2018, the region opened up, including for many journalists, yet most journalists that come to the Ogaden today are not allowed to report on sensitive issues and are not therefore persecuted by the local authorities as well as Ethiopian federal government. All the political parties in Dogen are more than willing to take part in the election this upcoming September, as long as a space set for free and a fair election, and only time will tell if that's coming to fruition. As today, the people of Dogen live in peace, but nobody is sure how long this peace will last, knowing the Ethiopian federal government is yet not implementing its side of what the deal the following peace agreement between the ONLF and the Ethiopian government, with fears that this might lead instability or even full-blown conflict in near future. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan. I know that Mr. Okok, the representative of the Southwest Indigenous People Humanitarian Organization, is about to join us. I don't know if you can already hear us, Mr. Okok. Can you hear me? In this moment, no. So if it's not a problem, I would like to move directly to Ms. Senna Jinjimo, the Executive Director of the Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy Association, which was the first one asking us to organize this meeting to bring the people together. Senna, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Distinguished guest, fellow civil society member, I would like to start by thanking Member of Parliament, MEP George Sele, MEP Inzion Koryo, Vice President of European Parliament, UNPO, and partnering organizing for having invited me to this very special platform to represent the Oromo voice. As a space for society is shrinking with international institutions, I deeply value this opportunity to bring us together while we fail to do so in the scope of this discussion. In this regard, I very much look forward to listening, learning from my fellow Ethiopian to work together for a constructive solution to current crisis engulfing our country, where millions are suffering from man-made famine, rape used as a weapon of war, not just in Tigray, ethnic violence have gone to the roof, where many atrocities goes unheard and unspoken, especially in Oromia. I would like to ask Lucia at some point when I talk about the opposition to share a silent video, and also share a map of Oromia. My name is Senna Jinjimo. I am the Executive Director for Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy Association, or OLA. OLA is an umbrella organization representing over 50 Oromo communities across Western country, but we are based in the United States, where half of our organization are. I'm a refugee survivor of the previous regime that ruled Ethiopia for 27 years. Like my father, I was born in a struggle, and here I am struggling in my 30s to be treated equally in Ethiopia. While many in Ethiopia, and most certainly the world, has just begun to learn how brutal the Ethiopian regime is against its own people by inviting foreign enemies, I'm here to tell you the abuses we see, the rape we read, the torture we hear, the man-made famine we watch have always been part of Ethiopia's rule to control opposition. I feel good now the world can see and understand. In fact, the chain that brought the current prime minister to power was paved and paid by over 5,000 Oromo youths who sacrificed their lives. Abiy was crowned as a change leader to transition to democracy, even though he was part of the system that abused and killed thousands of Ethiopians, especially Oromos. Oromos are the single largest ethnic group in Ethiopia and Horn of Africa, and the second or large by some account in the whole of Africa. In Ethiopia alone, Oromo make over 50 million. Oromia is home to gold, coffee, many rivers, natural resources, including contributing 57% of Nile water. Sadly, the size of Oromo population, the national resource have made Oromo and Oromia a target to all Ethiopian rulers. Without Oromia, there is no Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country of over 80 different ethnic groups. Oromos are just one of that 80, but they make half of that population. However, for political purpose, all ruling parties have always tried to minimize the number of Oromo to smaller figure, now to as low as 35%. Even by that account, Oromo make 40 million. Oromia is located at the heart of Ethiopia. In fact, the capital city is located at the heart of Oromia, surrounded by Oromo farmers who are pushed out of their land. Addis Ababa was founded at the start of the scramble for Africa, displacing indigenous Oromo clan like Galan and Abichum. Sadly, today, one can hardly find Galan or Abichum, and if they are found, they are most likely the gatekeeper to once there used to be their dad's land. Many Ethiopian ruler parties have tried to paint Oromo as radical to gain support from the West. In truth, Oromos are half Muslim and the other half are Christian and Waqf Fatah follower. While I can say so much about the persecution of Waqf Fatah followers, today I'm here to highlight the immediate and the current crisis destabilizing Ethiopia and the Horn. As much as the world wants to focus and make the current crisis about small minority group making 6%, the crisis began long before the war in Tigray. It took Abiy only 6 months to declare state of emergency in west of Oromia in 2018, where he officially began bombing Oromos. In 2019, Amnesty International annual report showed mass arrest, extrajudicial killing, village burning, torture, rape, just to name few. The 50-page document lists exactly how the Ethiopian Defense Force was eliminating Oromos who considered them a threat. This was 2 years ago. This was before Hachalu's murder. This was before the war in Tigray. Today, according to opposition party, Oromo Study Association, and our own volunteers on the ground, at least 50,000 Oromos remain in prison, including Columbia and Stanford graduate and an American citizen, Jawar Mohammed. The latest Ethiopian Human Rights Commission published last month showed mothers and children aged 5 months old in prison since the murder of Hachalu. Prisoners with a clear sign of torture, many freed prisoners, but yet police refused to release them, remain in prison. The case of Abdi Gaza are just one to point. In the end, I'd like to finish my statement by telling this distinguished guest, fellow partners, panelists, and hosts. Last night, 17 Oromo communities met to pass a resolution for call 3 basic demands to be implemented to move forward. First, stop the war and stop killing civilians in all parts of Ethiopia. Second, remove federal, Amara, and Eritrean soldiers from Oromia. Third, release all political prisoners. Also, while Oromia is home to nearly 60% of Ethiopian population, yet there are no Oromo opposition party that took place in this past election. The only good news from this past election was the fact that the world have realized that their selection was not fair nor credible. Communities, some of these among those irregularities are in Ambo, a few kilometers away from the capital city. Police and security force went home to collect the voter card. In Asasa, residents told us voting card was collected 5 weeks earlier, but they were told to come to voting station simply to get the fingerprint. In Shashamene, poll watcher made sure voters put their card in the PP prosperity bags where they are showing, and if they made a mistake, they are pinched to make it to put it in the right box. Ethiopia's 6th general election took place where opposition parties were pushed out in Oromia, where over 50,000 Oromo political prisoners remained in prison, where the country was at war in Tigray, as Eritrea and Sudan have invaded, where part of Oromia and Amara is under state of emergency, where over 100 constituency wasn't even able to vote. In the last week alone, over 600 refugees died off the coast of Djibouti as they sought safety. It is not surprising these thousands of refugees are flocking out of Ethiopia to make it to Europe and the Middle East. Sadly, no one wants them. Neither do they want to leave either. But when powerful countries such as Italy give 400,000 euro for Abiy coronation, it's impossible to stabilize or democratize Africa. I'd like to thank this panelist for holding this event, and I look forward to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senna. I can see that here with us there is Mr. Kokokok, representative of the Southwest Indigenous People Humanitarian Organization. Mr. Kok, can you hear us? Mr. Kok? I've been told you're here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely, but we cannot see you.
Oh, okay.
We're waiting for your camera. In the meantime, if you have questions, make sure to write it in the public chat and we will gather them together if we're going to have time to discuss it. Our colleagues, Mercedes and Monge, will collect them.
Can you see my picture now?
Mr. Koch, we can see you. Fantastic. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Welcome. Thank you. Do you want me to present now?
Yes, absolutely. Please go forward. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, dear Mr. Lucia, Project Manager, Horn of Africa of the UNPO moderator, dear Judy, member of the European Parliament, dear Ignacio, member of the European Parliament, dear Fabio Masio, Vice President of the European Parliament, dear Mr. Jane Christophe, European Parliament, dear participants, my name is Okok. I'm the representative of the Southwest Indigenous People Humanitarian Organization. This is an organization that represents more than 24 different minority groups or communities in the southwest of Ethiopia. First and foremost, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak on this very important conference about Ethiopian June 21st election behavior, or what may be known as or challenges or possible irregularities in regard to the Southwest indigenous people or communities. However, due to the new changes in the new Ethiopian administrative structure that eliminate the existence of the southern Oromo Valley zones of the pastoralist indigenous community, I will only focus on my representation on the Gambela region electoral behavior. Brief background of the region. We have 3 zones and 13 woredas. This is one of the turbulent region in Ethiopia where most of the ethnic cleansing conflicts, genocide were taking place by the Ethiopian government. In order to repel this situation, the political situation facing the indigenous people in this region, they form a political party that is called Gambela People Liberation Front, which has been struggling for 45 years, for more than 45 years now. This party was invited by the Abiy during the time he invited all the opposition groups to come to the country to contest peacefully on the election, which took place in June 21st, 2021. During the contest, we have seen a lot of irregularities and challenges prior to the election contest in the region. Our organization has witnessed the denial of access of the opposition parties. The denial access for the popular opposition party, which is called GPLM, was seen in one of the zone, which is called North Zone. GPLM did not register completely in this zone. One of the irregularities is the unrealistic total of 414,950 registered voters. And this has been escalated. I mean, the number is so high compared to the population of 435,999, in which about 4.8% could not be the unregistered children and those who could not cast their ballot. So we see this was unrealistic to have that total number of registered voters, which is a source of fraud. The other thing is the initial handover of the ballot boxes from the election board to the Regional Justice and Security Bureau exposed ballots to fraud. This ballot was sent to Gambela from Addis, and the first hand, they were placed in the hand of Justice and Security Bureau, in which the top leaders of this bureau were the contestants themselves. Despite another point is, despite that the law forbids any contester in the regional election office, the contestants' top leaders of Justice and Security Bureau remain unchanged from the office and made major fraud in the system. In another word, the top leaders of Justice and Security Bureau, they were in the election office system, and according to the law, they were not. I mean, they remain in the system in which they made a lot of irregularities in the system. Last one is the ruling party, which is the PP authorities, being aware of losing support from the indigenous population. They mobilize refugees in the newcomer highland Ethiopia beforehand to elect them and give them more polling station and ballot papers than the locals. And these are the irregularities that took place before the election. During the election, one of the irregularities was that people have seen or they experience shortage of ballot papers in the polling station where the indigenous population were the majority, meaning that they give more ballot paper to where the ruling party can be elected. In Itang town in particular, there was an irregularity in which the Warada chairman forcefully pushed out and beaten the local observers and filled the ballot boxes with unlawful ballot papers in favor for the Prosperity Party. In the Gambela town, the regional state vice governor was also caught red-handed with 2 ballot boxes in his home as he was distributing this ballot paper to his supporters, and there was no action taken against the crime he committed. Another point is in Abubo and Godera Waradas, these are 2 constituencies, and one of the area in the Gambela town called Newland, the indigenous voters were compromised. The indigenous votes were compromised to the new Highland Ethiopians and the refugees votes for the Prosperity Party. The irregularities and challenges in the post-election, that is after June 21st, the ruling parties is making a lot of effort to swap the ballot boxes in the constituencies where the opposition party has won the election. And this is threatening the security in the region because the public is resisting. Killing has occurred in some places by the government security agencies to make it an excuse to brand the opposition parties with the crimes. Lastly, as to conclude this, the Gambela region has conducted a sham election. The Ethiopian and regional election in general, to us, according to our region, was a political gesture for the MP Abiy Ahmed to legitimize the victory for its ruling party and the leadership. My personal opinion, according to these irregularities, given the political turmoil and the instability in Ethiopia, election is not the right option this time, suggesting thorough negotiation and building of multinational federalism and confederation to heal the country. In our region, people, they are fighting for self-determination, but the ruling parties is fighting to centralize the power, which goes in opposite way, and this is a threat to peace at any time. According to this election, we are seeing a lot of problems to come up, which we are calling to the international community to make this election void. And thank you for listening. This is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koch, Representative. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Thank you very much for your speech. I believe that we can move forward with the next speaker, Abeba Teferi, the president of the Command Advocacy Group. Abeba, are you with us?
Yes.
Fantastic. So you can turn on your camera and you can open your microphone. Mr. O'Cock, you can close your camera now. Thank you so much.
Okay, may I start?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Members of the European Parliament, members of the Unrepresented Nation and Peoples Organization, and distinguished guests. On behalf of the Command people, I am Ababata Ferry, and thank you for the opportunity to report the human rights violations and political oppression witnessed before, during, and after the elections at the hands of current regime. Because you are shining the light of public scrutiny on the events in Ethiopia, you are giving hope to countless people who would otherwise have none. The Command are an ancient people, having lived in Ethiopia for approximately 6,000 years, primarily in an area of northwestern Ethiopia, more recently known as Amara region. The Comanche are also a well-known people with a distinctive culture, identity, religion, and historical language. Currently, more than 1.5 million people identify as Comanche in Ethiopia. The last decade has brought regularly occurring sustained and deadly violence against the Comanche at the hands of national and regional forces. The Amhara Regional Government Special Forces, sanctioned by the Ethiopian federal government, organized and armed local youth groups and militias known as Fano or Gobezalika to execute mass ethnic killings. These armed militias and others commenced an organized campaign to mutilate, castrate, impale, and rape the Command people, while the Special Force and Defense Forces used mechanized forms of violence, ranging from artillery, snipers, machine guns, and bombs. Since 2015, the number of command deaths at the hands of the Ethiopian government has reached thousands. Homes, churches, clinics, farms, and businesses are being bombed and burned. Men and women are raped, burned, mutilated, tortured publicly, and displaced by thousands. Ashes are left where villages once existed. The barbaric campaign of violence carries the specific intent of wiping the Command from the earth as an ethnicity and destroying and residual political impact of remaining people. The plan was foreshadowed in 2007 when the Ethiopian census omitted Command as a choice of ethnic registration. Since that time, the Command people went from merely oppressed to completely unrepresented. The intervening years have confirmed this course of action as the Command have remained under attack with reasonable fear of more attacks. In many ways, the Command people have prepared for the 2021 election for several years. The purposeful omission of the entire Command population in the 2007 census left them fearful but determined. The Command people organized themselves for ethnic recognition and self-rule under Provision 39 of the National Constitution. According to the article of the Constitution, every nation, nationality, and people in Ethiopia has the right to speak, to write, and to develop its own language, to express, to develop, and to promote its culture, and to preserve its history. Every nation, nationality, and people in Ethiopia has the right to a full measure of self-government, which includes the right to establish an institution of government in the territory that it inhabits and to equitable representation in state and federal governments. That work resulted in the establishment of the Command Democratic Party, KDP, the first political party in Ethiopian history to fully represent Command people. The work did not go unnoticed by the government and was met with swift and sustained resistance. Local self-governance is precisely why the Command people invested their hopes and aspirations into the June 2021 election. Although the national government is hopelessly corrupt and oppressive, many ethnic groups are allowed self-governance under Constitutional Provision 39. The Command people merely aspire to such local government and self-determination. Local authority is self-evidently important for any population, but it is an especially important cause for the Command. Despite a history in Ethiopia older than the written word, the Command have historically been treated as inferior by the ruling classes. In fact, the Command have never had the right of local self-governance enjoyed by most Ethiopian groups in recorded history. Most recently, the lack of command officials in any level of government have left its population with no redress for grievances arising from the ethnic massacre attacks by local, regional, and national forces. The June 2021 election was more than a political contest. It became the source of achieving some measure of safety from government attacks and a full measure of identity as people. In the 2 months preceding the election, the ongoing attacks were elevated to an existential crisis. The latest round of attacks against command commenced in April 21 in Aikal, Chilga, Gondar, and surrounding areas, where commands dominate in population. At the time, the smoke rising up from the burning buildings made more lethal artillery raining down from the sky. As the election approached, the command people understood that a large election turnout would see government increasing the crackdown. Notwithstanding that danger, the Command Democratic Party pursued justice at the ballot box. The Prosperity Party, formed in 2019, held the election campaign in the area, expecting to receive unanimous support by the locals. The Command Democratic Party, however, which had recently legally registered in the election, campaigned and won the clear support of the local residents. The government's response was brutal. The town of Aikal, Chilga, Koskwam, Gondar, and surrounding areas fell under siege by not just the Amara Special Forces, but also Ethiopian federal government and now Eritrean troops. They have cut all telecommunication lines and internet, power, water, public and private transportation services. Without access to communication or utilities, it is impossible to quantify the dead, the displaced, the wrongfully imprisoned, or the wounded in need of medical attention. To maintain their shroud of secrecy over these atrocities, government forces will not even allow burials of the dead in these mass killings. At the end, they closed most command area voting location as unsafe. Much like Tigray and other regions of the country, the residents of Al-Chilga and other command areas remain at the mercy of the Ethiopian federal government and Eritrean troops, Amhara special forces, militias, and PANOs. The command people and countless others across Ethiopia agree with the observation by the American Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who remarked that the June 2021 election in Ethiopia took place against a backdrop of grave instability, including increasing inter-ethnic and intercommunal conflicts and an electoral process that was not free or fair for all Ethiopians. Secretary Blinken was correct in that the election was neither free nor fair. The violent voter suppression and intimidation prevented the election from reflecting the will of the Ethiopian people. Neither the turnout nor the result were honest or trustworthy. For the foregoing reasons, we believe the election should be nullified and then conducted with safe ballot access, safe areas at and near voting location, and international election monitors at all locations where votes are cast and counted. As of today, the command people face the dual existential threats of systemic government oppression and ethnic massacre. The acts of the current regime are antithetical to every basic human right. Thank you for your time and attention to this most urgent crisis. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferry. We are already running a bit late, so we'll move immediately forward to Mr. Samuel Sikwarie Sukuma. My apologies for the pronunciation today with all the speakers. Mr. Sakuma is the Executive Council member of the Sidama diaspora community. Mr. Sakuma, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Can you please open your camera? We cannot see you yet.
Can you see me now?
You are loading. Fantastic. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Lucia, dear members of EU Parliament, and the dear fellow speakers and other guests. I am honored to be here representing Sidama diaspora community. My name is Sikware Sak, and I am a member of Sidama diaspora. I speak the Sidama's perspective on the current crisis. So before I get the election, a background of Sidama. So Sidama, fifth largest in the country, the estimated number of million. Until recent, it was the only among the with own regional states. Location-wise, Sidama is located about 270 kilometers south of the capital city of Ethiopia, which is Addis Ababa, and we share border with Oromia. About 87% of our border is with Oromia, and 13% is with southern nation, nationalities, and peoples region. So when it comes to the economy, it is among the biggest economy in the country, by being the second biggest source of coffee and foreign exchange. Culture-wise, Sidama has a distinct culture. It has its own new Lunar New Year, which is Fiche Chambalala. It is registered in UNESCO. And we have Afni system where the elders come together and sit down and resolve the disputes. So Sidama has its own language, Sidamu Afo. When it comes to involvement of Sidama, their self-rule 1890, and were relegated to since ever since then. The Sidama people are struggling to regain governance and preserve culture and identity. So, what does Sidama's struggle look like during the reform? But by the reform, I mean since Dr. Abiy Ahmed assumed power in 2018. So the struggle of Sidama continued, with spearhead the peaceful Ejeta movement that united the proponents of multinational federalists and revealed stark ideological differences within with the unionists. So the Ejeta united all Sidama people to demand its long overdue rights to self-rule. And Sidama nation pushed hard with its peaceful demand for regional self-rule through peaceful demonstrations and stay-at-home protests. Regardless of peaceful demands, the government responded with brute force and killed over 100 Sidama civilians between June 2018 and July 19, 2019. Related that thousands of Sidama civilians have been arrested. And finally, the regime was obliged to conduct Sidama referendum on November 2029, and the result was resounding 98% for statehood, and Sidama became a state. Despite Sidama being a state and gaining its autonomy, the ruling party, however, made decisions to weaken the region and undermine the voice of the Sidama people. A well-known and historical political party that was expected to pose the biggest challenge to the ruling party, that is Prosperity Party in the region, suddenly were assimilated with the ruling party, denying our people solid option to choose from. So the election, regardless of all those factors, that the country was in chaos, we were basically in a civil war, and the election went ahead. and it was conducted on June 21st, 2021. And it has been said that 12 political parties participated in the Sidama region on the election. However, during the campaign, the opposition parties were not given equal platform for the obvious fact that the government controls almost everything, the media, the logistics, and everything. After the election took place, recently, one of the parties that they participated, the Sidama Unity Party, has requested the National Ethiopian Board of Election to reconduct the election, mentioning various illegal activities that took place during the election process. So we therefore don't believe the election were conducted in sufficient, fair, and free environment, given a sizable portion of the country either did not participate in this election due to the ongoing conflict and war, and not get to vote for their preferred candidate because they had been thrown in jail. We believe our country missed a great opportunity to make a successful transition from dictatorship to democracy. So given all those factors, we don't believe the election was the solution for our crisis, and is not the solution for the crisis we are, and will not be the solution for the crisis. So what do we recommend as a Sidama community is that all political prisoners must be released immediately, and all inclusive dialogue is needed to begin immediately. So national reconciliation is the only viable way out of the current political crisis. And the only way forward for Ethiopia is multinational federalism, where the rule of law governs the affairs of nations, both collective and individual rights under the current constitutional framework. We also urge all stakeholders to take a step back, think through the seriousness of the mess we are in, and make a wise decision towards a peaceful coexistence. We propose for all stakeholders to agree on compromised solutions and to work towards a united and a democratic multinational federal Ethiopia, a state that recognizes the interdependent and intertwined nature of the fate of our people. So the Sidama nation humbly suggests that the EU and the rest of the international community to assist Ethiopia to achieve all this. And thank you for listening, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakuma. The last speaker for the day is the Chief Networking Officer at Omnia Tigray, Mehaza Jidei. Can you hear us? Can you see us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Perfectly. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening to all esteemed attendants and participants. And thank you to the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization for organizing this much needed event and inviting Omnia Tigray to share the Tigrayans' perspective on the Ethiopian election held on June 21st. We at Omnia Tigray are an advocacy organization with a mission of amplifying and advocating for the people of Tigray. Specifically, our vision is to fight against injustice, advocate for the peace and economic development, and amplify the voice of the people in Tigray via our sustainable, long-lasting platform. Tigray is the northmost region of Ethiopia, bordering Eritrea to the north, Sudan to the west, and the Amara region of Ethiopia to the south. With an estimated population of 10 million, the people of Tigray make up approximately 7% of Ethiopia's population. Despite our small number, we are ethnically and religiously diverse. Within Tigray, the largest ethnic groups are Tigrayans, who speak the language Tigrinya and are either Christian Orthodox or Muslims. The region is also home to two ethnic minorities, the Oromo and Kunama, who speak their own respective languages. Abiy Ahmed postponed the national elections twice since coming to power in April 2018, and like other dictators around the world, blamed the coronavirus pandemic and global and logistical constraints. Meanwhile, the Tigrayan Regional Council conducted its constitutionally mandated regional elections in September 2020, which Abiy Ahmed's administration condemned. According to the Addis Standard, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, won 98.5% of the 190 seats during the regional election in Tigray. Over 2.8 million voters were registered, and turnout was 97%. Abiy saw Tigray's decision to proceed with the regional elections and to TPLF's win as a threat to his power and ambitions to consolidate power unconstitutionally. This eventually led Abiy to wage the ongoing genocidal war against the government and the people of Tigray on November 1st, 2021. There were several irregularities during the national elections. Soon after coming to power, Abiy Ahmed dissolved the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, EPRDF, as a political coalition that had ruled Ethiopia for 3 decades. He then merged the 3 out of the 4 ethnic-based parties to form the Prosperity Party, or PP. The Tigray People's Liberation Front was the only EPRDF coalition party that refused to join the PP, rightfully deeming its formation unconstitutional. With the most dominant media outlets in Ethiopia being state-funded, the PP has considerable influence over its coverage and the narrative surrounding it. As a result of the blurred lines between the state and the party affairs, the PP has the state apparatus at its disposal. It has access to parts of the country that opposition parties rooted regionally cannot easily access, considerable financial means and national name recognition. While opposition parties face challenges registering their candidates for constituencies, the PP is the only party that managed to register all of its candidates in all the 673 constituencies, leading opposition parties to put forth complaints of biases in favor of the incumbent of the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia. In addition to forming his own party, Abiy Ahmed ensured that there were no strong opponents who could challenge his ruling during the election. He imprisoned or eliminated opposition leaders from the political landscape before the elections. There were also several opposition parties that boycotted the elections across the country for unfair treatments, negatively impacting the credibility of the national election. Abiy had no interest in holding democratic elections to begin with, nor did he have any interest in having voters that represented different regions or interests. With a genocidal war on Tigray and prominent political parties and community members in other parts of the country put in prison, including Mr. Baqqala Garba, Jawar Mohammed, and Hamza Borona of the Oromo region, Abiy set the stage for victory. There are reports that Abiy's administration attempt to inflate the number of voters in rural areas by tying possession of voter cards with some benefits like having access to fertilizer and seeds. No parties that represent the Tigray communities participated in national elections. The government did not even attempt to hold elections in Tigray. Tigray was simply left out of the equation during the national elections of this year. The contest in the national election was then only amongst Addis Ababa's urban politicians and ethnic Amhara's camp that shared the same ideology and vision of state building for Ethiopia. Among other things, they are committed to eventually dismantle the existing multinational federal arrangement and replace it with the pre-1991 un-Amharanized and centralized state. On the other hand, the political camp that represents the human and demographic realities of the country of more than 80 ethno-linguistic groups, envisioning to further democratize and consolidate the federal and decentralized Ethiopia that respects and promotes the diverse cultures while politically empowering populations to administer their own affairs at regional and local level, have been systematically sidelined from the arena by trumped-up political charges of their prominent figures, and of course, with the bloody armed conflict in Tigray, Oromo, and Benicional regions. The number of Tigrayan politicians who have been arrested is currently unknown. However, TPLF and the leaders of other Tigrayan party leaders who had active role in Tigray's political arena are currently fighting Ethiopia and Eritrean forces in Tigray. It is not easy for journalists to access Tigray at the moment. The Ethiopian and Eritrean troops, as well as Amhara militias, had controlled most of Tigrayan lands until recently. International and local journalists have been limited from entering and covering the genocidal war on Tigray since Abiy waged the war on November 2020. all to conceal the war crimes and ethnic cleansing happening there. The federal government had opposed Tigray's decision to proceed with the regional elections in September 2020, as it had called for a national postponement of the election due to the coronavirus pandemic. In fact, as a result of holding these elections, the Ethiopian government declared war on Tigray. This war has caused over 2.2 million Tigrayans to be internally displaced and over 75,000 Tigrayans to flee to Sudan. Furthermore, the genocidal rape and starvation are used as war tactics, with over 5.2 million Tigrayans facing a man-made famine right now. Thus, Tigrayans were in no position to vote during the national elections held on June 21st. According to reports from the UN, over 5.2 million Tigrayans are on the verge of massive starvation, along with facing numerous crimes against humanity. Abiy had also designated the TPLF, the elected regional party of the Tigray, as terrorist organization a month before holding national elections. It is clear to Tigrayans that this was not an election that sought their voices. Abiy has led the country to the verge of complete disintegration through political repression, state-sponsored genocide, and fueling ethnic violence. Before any legitimate election can occur, cessation of violence, national dialogue, and reform need to take place to ensure the safety of the electorate and people of Ethiopia. The election should also ensure the representation of all its citizens. To sum up, the outcome of the 2021 elections were premeditated. With the genocidal war on Tigray and several prominent opposition groups eliminated or imprisoned, the 2021 national elections have only weakened public trust in the system. Ethiopia will not benefit from fraudulent national elections. Thus, the national elections that have happened need to be nulled and void, and peace and national consensus is achieved through inclusive dialogue. To reach a national consensus, the Tigray community urged the international community to push for the following actions. First of all, the international community, particularly the EU, needs to push for verifiable and immediate withdrawal of Eritrean and Amara invading forces from Tigray. Second, cessation of all hostilities in Tigray and against Tigrayans across Ethiopia. Third, unfettered and unrestricted humanitarian access need to be given to international aid agencies so that they can deliver the much-needed life-saving aid to the people of Tigray. Fourth, the restoration of federally cut-off public infrastructure in Tigray, including phone and internet services. Fifth, there needs to be independent UN and UN-only led investigation into war crimes and crimes against humanity the people of Tigray have endured for the past 8 months. Lastly, the immediate release of all political prisoners in Ethiopia, including those from Tigray, and unrestricted access for local and international media to all parts of Tigray. Finally, I would like to leave you with a news that just happened right now. One of the bridges that was connecting Tigray to Sudan has been completely destroyed by forces loyal to Abiy Ahmed as we speak. This makes the work of international aid workers much harder to deliver humanitarian aid for those suffering from a man-made famine. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope the voices here today will help you in formulating a policy that would bring Ethiopia together and end the suffering of innocent people at the hands of dictatorial regimes in Addis Ababa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Meaza, for your very valuable testimony. We are running out of time, so apologies to all the attendees. Since we are going, toward the end of the day, I would like to go to the chat, because we are having a very good conversation thanks to a question that Justin just raised, that I will read. And I would like to ask all the speakers to spend 1 minute saying what they are typing so that it is on the record. The question that Justin was asking, apologies, but it's a long chat. Justin was saying, every ethnic group has painted a picture of ethnic political violence and repression, both between communities and at the hands of the current government. If everyone agrees that their community has been victimized, how can Ethiopians use that as a starting point for a productive national dialogue and a political reform. I will start giving the floors quickly to in alphabetical order as before. So, Ambasso, the floor is yours. Can you hear us? Ambasso?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. How would you respond to this question?
My response is if those the government and its supporters, especially Amara elites and politicians, are willing to practice the existing constitution, these all problems would not have been happened. They are not willing to use constitution. Our request is the government to respect our constitutional rights. The whole problem is circulating around the constitution, using and practicing constitution. But now it is too late. Now it is a different situation. We need to reorganize transitional government led by neutral organizations, maybe foreigners and civil society from the country, and maybe from political parties. But the government should not be the leader of the transitional organization. Because of that, we can reconduct the free and fair election in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are gonna pass by the second to the second speaker. Ted, are you here?
Yes, I am, Lucia. Can you hear me well?
Perfectly. Go.
Okay, thank you. Just very quickly to address some of the statements that were made and the question that was posed. It's really important to understand that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is an Oromo who hails from the Oromo Prosperity Party. And also important to understand that the Amaras are not in power. Amaras have not been in power in Ethiopia since Mengistu Haile Mariam, representing the Derg regime, came into power. So a very, very long time. That said, I think that there is an opportunity for a true inclusive dialogue, especially at this moment when all Ethiopians truly need it and want it. And so, and this can happen if we can have a platform where nonviolent political actors, civil society organizations, religious institutions, majority of Ethiopians are very, very religious, and also community leaders, even at the local level, can have an opportunity to participate in a conversation, to talk about what kind of Ethiopia that we want. I believe that majority of Ethiopians want peace, want away from violence, and where they can have a stable country, economically develop their country, and have real, true, genuine democracy. This is not something that is undoable, and also a way where people's all ethnic groups, their cultural rights can be protected. And but I think one of the things that's really important to note is that Ethiopia is one of the oldest countries in the world. And so with that in mind, we do not have to use the ethnic-based constitutional framework of the past 27 years as the only reference point. There are many reference points that we can use in Ethiopia's long history. There are also other reference points that we can utilize in thriving democracies around the world. Many of the countries in the European Union are exemplary of that. The United States, Canada, many others. And I think we can rejoice and also enjoy and respect and appreciate the diversity of Ethiopia, ethnic diversity, religious diversity. There are many diversities within the country. But we do not have to use ethnicity as the sole and only component of political representation or organization. And if we do not openly talk about this and look at what the underlying issues are and continue to use ethnicity as the sole and only component in political organization and have a system that continues to foster distrust between ethnicities, and where you have a system where one ethnic group tries to get to the top and oppress all others, we're going to continue to have this this problem of innocent civilians, especially minority groups in these ethnic-based regions, to be targeted by armed groups and also local militias. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ted. Let's try to make sure less than 1 minute. Ibrahim, do you want to bring your contribution?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
1 minute, please. We're already very late. No, Ibrahim, really 1 minute because everybody has to speak. Thank you.
That's 1 minute is not enough to my laughing because a lot of things have been said there. I respect you, Lucia. I will tell you, yes, if the foreign body is going to be in that steering meeting table, we will accept that, because the problem of Ethiopia, nobody to trust nobody. The speaker before me, he kept talking that he and his tribe have been exposed to ethnic cleansing. And this is the problem of Ethiopia, that people in the big stage, they kept lying, just the way Abiy is lying to you, to the world, and lying to the world. He has election, he got this, and then he got Nobel Prize. We in Benicional, what we experience in this country, as I told you, is slavery and genocide and ethnic cleansing. In the emperor time, in the communist time, in the federation time, and in this time. This is what experience. When I say slavery, still we have people in a place called Matahara where the sugar cane now, who have been took and kidnapped, free people, and they slave them, they put them there. Still now, where I'm talking to you. When I'm talking to you now, the great bloody dam called Renaissance Dam, which everybody in Amara and everybody in so-called Ethiopia are happy with it, that we're going to bring us prosperity. This dam is a bloody dam killing our people every day. The day just they put the stone for building this, 200,000 of our people are being killed, displaced in mass grave, and nobody asked for it. When I said to you there is 6 million of Benicional people still alive, 6 million of them are being killed, eradicated, in mass killing. Therefore, for us, the exist of this, if this country, it means the continuance of our atrocity, the continuance of ethnic cleansing, is the continuance of a slavery for us. This is a racist government country built on racist, nothing common between them. When they tell you there is a 300,000 years of Ethiopia, old Ethiopian, this is a stolen history. They are lying in their history too. Even the name Ethiopia is not belong to them. The name Ethiopia itself is not belong to them. All of you are educated people. Go and dig out where they got this name. They got this name in 1945 when Haile Selassie was a refugee in Sudan. He stolen this name from there. And the same way they stolen us as a people, as the land. This is what happened. Wake up the world. What is going in Ethiopia is a shame for the world. It's a shame for the world, and I'm telling you. And I want European Union to have somebody involved, not to go to Addis Ababa. No, go to Asosa, go to Benicional, go to the Kimat people, go to the Agau. See what happened, how they eradicated us, how they deprive us to we don't ask for water, we don't ask for internet, we ask for to be exist in our land. We are asking only for existence. On the land God created to us, we create there. We don't want even election. All these things is just like ice cream. We don't want those. We want to live as human beings in our land. We deprived that for 120 years. My people, my tribe is the royal tribe who ruled Sudan for 1,000 years, 1,100 years, with the kingdom called Black Kingdom and Funj Kingdom. And we live for 123 years in slavery in Ethiopia. Come on, world, work up. The worst is on the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Let's try to keep a calm tone on everybody, but I understand it's a very, very sensitive issue, so I totally feel you. I know, Mr. Hassan, are you here quickly? Mr. Hassan? If Mr. Hassan is not here immediately, Senna, do you want to jump in? You're muted, Senna.
Okay, thank you so much, Lucy. You know, the gentleman, Mr. Ibrahim, spoke, and I think we are all spoke. And the saddest thing that makes me really angry is the fact that there's this illusion to paint Abiy as an Oromo. The very person he targeted from the beginning, long before Tigray, was Oromo. He declared state of emergency in Oromia. He bombed Oromia, and he'd been bombing Oromia, Western Oromia, until this day. In the world, have not paid attention before Hachalu's killing. Hachalu, the most popular Oromo singer, was killed last year, exactly yesterday, 2 days ago, on the 29th of June. And nearly 200 people were murdered within 24 hours. In a state of emergency were declared across the country. And the security force killed. When they kill, is the security force killed along with Amara Regional. Today we are being terrorized by Amara Regional Force. For 120 years, just like Benicional Gumuz, just like others, we have been terrorized by Amara nationalist extremists along who, you know, Abiy can be Oromo by blood, but his vision have been clearly said is a unitary, is the bringing back of the old Amara supremacy to Ethiopia. And that is what the Oromos are against, even though we are majority in number. 50% of Ethiopian population are Oromo, yet are treated less than minority. 27 years we were oppressed. I'm a refugee survivor of the 27 previous regime. It is all in the name of Amhara supremacy in that country. So it's really, to me, it's mind-boggling that, you know, we'll see Abiy as in anything Oromo. My colleague have said in federalism, you know, it's not, the constitution does not say ethnic federalism. It's a national federalism. It's the existence, recognition that me as Oromo belong in Ethiopia. Me as Benicional, me as Tigray, me as Amhara can belong in Ethiopia. In Oromia, there are nearly 9 million non-Oromos. Among that, 70% of them are Amhara. They are the elites. They are the holder, the business owner, the richest in Oromia. Nobody kills them. Nobody does anything them. But yet Oromos are accused federalism is bad for them. So if federalism is bad, and if Amharas don't feel safe in Oromia, that, you know what I'm saying, that Tigrayans were hanged when TPLF left power 4 years ago. The Tigrayans was hanged in Amhara. They weren't hanged in Oromia, but Oromos are the one accused. But to answer the question that in here is that really that dialogue is the only way option if that country to exist. And people like Benicional, who are a very small number, Kemant and Agwa, other people who are minority, they need a protection. And the only way to protect them is that in their own region. And we as Oromo feels like we feel like protecting our own region. If a region, certain don't feel or good or feel like protected, that they have a right to move. But I feel like dialogue should take place, and dialogue really need to take place by truly independent, not by the country like Italy that gives millions of dollars to give coordination to keep the system or to bring back the old system or unitary system, which would clearly say, which as if you heard it from today, that there are 9 speakers and everybody, they want federalism. And from that federalism, we want everybody to feel like they belong in Ethiopia, they are part of Ethiopia. That what Abiy have in a box, what Abiy is trying to sell, along with an Amhara nationalist extremists who are terrorizing Oromos today. They're not in Amhara terrorizing Oromo. Oromos are not in Amhara region, but they are in Oromia terrorizing, and Abiy is using them. And so I think like independent, truly an organization that really doesn't care whether it's federalism or other system that kind of lead this dialogue. Because right now, Ethiopians don't trust each other. our lead in those.
Senna,
Sorry.
thank you so much. You have been super fast and quick. Great. I know that Jordi Soleil had to leave us. Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Corrao, you are here with us. Do you want to do the closing remarks? Just very quickly before to go, I wanted to tell you all that the idea originally was to create the report and have a follow-up conference in September. But I think it's very important, if you all agree, and you can write it on the chat, that we can have a closed-door dialogues with all these communities, if it's okay for you. Ignazio, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you, Lucia. Thanks to anyone that took the floor for the many things that you said and you wrote also in the chat, because I was trying to follow on both sides, and sometimes it's not easy. I understand that there are many things still to discuss, many things to clarify. I think that might be a good point to have a follow-up, as Lucia was saying, a second event. In the meanwhile, we can try to put things together, so with the help of UNPO, and try to write down this report, so that we can inform the other colleagues from the parliament. We will try to do it as soon as possible, because we understand that there is urgencies. You live it every day, and of course we have to. Unfortunately, we're not so fast, because we are a very bureaucratic body. So it's you know, our parliaments and institution works. They're not as fast as citizens and people needs, but we will try to do our best on the basis of the information and the report that we can have. So I thank you again, also in the name of Jordi, who left, which is a fellow colleague of the group and the parliament, and let's just keep in touch with the UNPO and try to do what is possible to foster, dialogue and solution.
Thank you very much for this great opportunity. Meaza, from the Tigray region, you are writing, and we are going to record your responses. So, as I said, in addition to the conference that we're going to have in September, most likely, of course, with Mr. Corrao and all the other people what you had today, and most likely with other people also, we're going to also have a UNPO private event only with the speakers to give them the opportunity to have talking on closed doors. So we're going to have the report, the public event, and the closed door event in September. We will receive your emails in the coming days to discuss a bit more on how to organize this. You can write still in the public chat for a few minutes, but we have to close the recording of the conference because we are already late. Thank you so much for joining us today and for really providing these very valuable testimonies. We're going to compile them together and send it out to the relevant stakeholders